The forgotten PhD that explains how Iran sees the West. I have acquired Professor Marandi's PhD thesis.
Before he was live on TV eviscerating Piers Morgan, Professor Saeed Mohammed Marandi was writing about Lord Byron. Yes, Lord Byron, the English 19th century romantic poet. Not nuclear policy, not sanctions, not war. That would all come later for the University of Tehran's ubiquitous professor. A 73,000-word PhD on romantic poetry, submitted quietly just as the Iraq War was spiraling into disaster. Almost nobody read it, until now. Marandi, recently dubbed the Iranian Tucker Carlson, wrote his doctoral thesis at the University of Birmingham. I was a postgraduate in the same faculty at the same time. I studied film, and in the corridor directly below me, Marandi was studying English. I recently acquired Marandi's thesis. It had to be digitized, which suggests it only ever existed as a hard copy. In short, it appears to have attracted almost no readership beyond its examiners. But Marandi's PhD isn't just a literary thesis. It's a blueprint for a way of seeing the world. In the acknowledgements, he thanks my old supervisor, Professor Scott Lucas, who recently told the Times podcast that Marandi warned him in no uncertain terms he'd be jailed if he returned to Iran. On page 3, Marandi dedicates the thesis to his wife, as well as to the memory of all my friends who lost their lives in the American-backed war in Iran, and to the memory of Imam Ayatollah Khomeini. The thesis, Lord Byron, His Critics and Orientalism, claims that Western literature produces a distorted image of the Orient, a colonial term for pretty much anything east of Istanbul. At first glance, the PhD looks like a standard post-colonial argument, drawing on Michel Foucault and Edward Said. But Marandi's intellectual move is to turn on Byron's defenders. These critics, he argues, repeatedly make basic errors about Islam, religious practices, belief in demons, misuse of terms, etc., and treat Byron as if he had real authority on the East. The Orient, Marandi says, is rendered primitive, mysterious, exotic, and incapable of self-government. It's not just that Byron systematically misrepresents the East, it's the whole system of scholarship around him. This is where the thesis stops being about Byron and starts being about how knowledge itself is produced. In the Jawahir, Islam is portrayed as fatalistic and punitive. In the Corsair, the East becomes exotic and sensual, a stylized fantasy. And in Byron's The Two Foscari, Eastern themes are used to explore despotism, subtly linking the East with tyranny and decline. And then comes the stress test, Don Juan, Byron's lengthy poetic masterpiece. Here, Byron becomes ironic, self-aware, and critical of Europe itself. So you might expect Marandi to go easy on him, but he doesn't. When Byron is crude, Marandi calls it Orientalism. When Byron is ironic, that's still Orientalism, just self-aware. None of this is to say that Marandi is simplistic or totalizing. Quote, the Ottoman rulers were definitely not striving for social justice and the legitimate rights of the people under their rule, he says. Rather, Marandi observes that it is the portrayal of ordinary people which is problematic in Western discourse. He calls the division of the world into East and West, Orient and Occident as a fictitious ideological construction, and that he does not wish to portray the East as superior. Seen in isolation, the thesis is a fairly conventional, albeit strident and forceful, piece of early 2000s literary theory. But Marandi went on to become the most well-known Iranian spokesperson in the Western world. Taken seriously, Marandi's framework leads to a particular orientation towards the world, a systematic distrust of Western narratives, a belief that information is a battleground, a tendency to see events as part of long-term structural conflict. Marandi's thesis may have been left unread in a dusty library near Selly Oak, but as America's war unravels, the mindset behind it is now shaping the world.